Now I got to hire somebody to implement it. Then I got to pay an attorney to help me with the documents. I got to pay a business broker to help me sell it. Like, am I going to be left with any money at the end of the day?
Right. I
And
know it does
the
sound a
answer
little
that
overwhelming.
it takes trust. Honestly, it takes trusting me when I say this. If you don't do that planning and hire all those people, you will get less net after cost. You will,
Yeah.
I guarantee you, you will probably get less.
Financial independence,
freedom,
financial picture,
independent financially,
financial future,
financial freedom and wealth,
financial independence.
Get your fill, financial independence and long life. Welcome to another episode of Get Your Fill, Financial Independence and Long Life, where we explore ways to achieve those two goals. And you are going to be so excited. You're going to love today's conversation because I know that you've been thinking that you've either started your business or you're thinking about starting your business. But you know what's really fun to think about is someone buying it from you and figuring out like how to make that happen and how to monetize this cool life's project that you've been working on. So Adam Koos is with us today. He is a nationally recognized wealth advisor. He's president of both Elevate and Exit and Libertas. Did I do that right? Libertas?
Libertas.
Libertas. Libertas Wealth Management Group, where he's been guiding business owners and working professionals to financial success for more than 2 decades. He's known for his straightforward, no-nonsense approach. He has been featured in major outlets like MarketWatch, The Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and he's been ranked by Investopedia as one of the top 100 most influential financial advisors in the country. Isn't this cool? Aren't you glad you
Huh.
tuned in today?
Now I'm blushing, but thank you.
Right? You should be blushing. This is very exciting. When he's not demystifying the complexities of retirement planning, you can find him hosting insightful podcasts or enjoying life's adventures with his bride and 2 boys. That's nice. Welcome, Adam.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
It is going to be fun. Thanks for being with us today.
Oh, thank you.
So before we started the recording, I was like selfishly thinking of pumping Adam for information about my business, which I'm going to be exiting in 2 years. And so we thought, hey, why not just bring you all in on the conversation and maybe we can use it like imagine it's a theoretical sort of thing because I'm about as far from being prepared to sell as a person could be. So you probably could learn all kinds of great stuff. And if you have thought, so this is what happens to people is they get this business going and they're all excited and they're like put all their heart and soul into it, but they don't necessarily think about the exit plan. So does it die when you die? Do you just have to like walk away from it and just let it implode without you because you now don't want to work, 75 hours a week? But there's an option, right? There is an alternative. If you set your business up correctly in the front end, then when it comes to the back end, you can actually sell it to somebody else who's going to enjoy it and love it the way you did. And they'll also give you some money.
Yeah,
So,
imagine that.
yeah. Well, because so many of us who have small businesses, like, oh, what's your retirement plan? My retirement plan is every cent I have goes into my business. That's the plan, right?
That's
So it'd be
right.
great if you could take some of that back.
Yeah, 100%. I think that I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you started with that actually because the reason we started doing this as part of our wealth management practice and made this a big initiative starting back in 2020. Well, and by the way, the reason it started was because we got bored. Every day we usually had, 24, 25 appointments a week. And then for 8 weeks, we had 3 appointments. That's it
Right.
in 8 weeks. So happy hour got earlier every day. We're looking for initiatives to install. But I read this book by the founder of the Exit Planning Institute, and the statistics blew my mind. So to start right off with what you just said, 80%, so the business owners listening right now or watching, 80% of business owners' net worth is in their company. And I pause on purpose because if you're listening to this or you're watching it, you're probably nodding your head and going, yeah, it sounds about like me. In fact, some people might think even more of it is in more than 80%. Now, you got to keep in mind you probably own a home, so, brokerage assets, retirement assets. So it's usually about 80/20. Here's where things get really scary. And the reason why we started doing this and making this a huge focus of what we're doing for our clients, which is basically bringing awareness to the crucial need for business owners to start planning for their transition well before they transition. I always say that you should start. It doesn't matter if you're 3 years from exit or 13, and we can talk about why that's so important or the side effects of it. But 80% of business owners' net worth in their network is in their business, but 80% of businesses don't sell; they dissolve.
Wow.
So think about all the great times you've had in your business since you've started it. The successes, the milestones, the excitement. Of course, most business owners are probably like me in that, they hit a big milestone and then it's fun for a few hours and then you wake up the next morning and think, well, what's next? Where were the fireworks? I
Right.
thought this was going to be great. It's kind of like you buy a new car, you get so excited about this new car and 2 weeks from now, it's just the car, who
Exactly.
cares
Oh, it's
anymore?
dirty. Forget it. Fun's
Right.
over.
So imagine all those great times, the milestones, but more importantly, um, think of the rough times. Think of the times that you hired a bad staff that didn't work out, you lost money, you lost time, struggles. Like I always like to share, there was a time when I would come home early in my career and I would hide from my wife that I was trying to find things in our house to sell on eBay so I could pay the mortgage, but I
Oh
didn't
my
want to
God.
freak her out. So
Yeah.
think about those times. Think about the struggles and how tough those times were and the successes, and then imagine being at the end of your career and not getting anything for it. So all that blood, sweat, and tears, your family getting nothing for your life's work. And so that's the first thing I want you to think about. The second thing is if you happen to be one of the 20% that's lucky enough to sell your business, 75% of those 20% sell for less than market value. And the reason why is for improper planning. They just don't plan. People say, you ask a business owner, I'm sure that you've probably know a business owner friend, maybe you're one of them, and people ask you, hey, when you thinking about retiring, when you think about kind of stepping away, and you'll say, I don't know, like 2, 3 years. And then you're talking to them another 2 or 3 years later, and like, so you getting close? Like, maybe 2 or 3 years. I
Yeah.
mean, it doesn't change. And then one day you say, you know what, I'm done. And the
Yeah.
reason why you're done all of a sudden is hopefully because you're just done. But because you don't plan, you didn't give yourself enough runway to plan for it, you're not going to get what your business is worth. You're just not.
Yeah.
Even though you're going to think and truly believe that your business is worth more than it's valued for, because you didn't prepare, you will not get what you want for it. Period. Um, so those statistics that the 80, 80, and 75 are kind of why we're doing it. And you can probably tell I get all fired up about this, but I am a business owner of 23 years here, and I want to save people from themselves and help them basically, get the right price for their and monetize their life's work. But I'll shut up. I'm talking too much.
No, you're perfect. But that's actually a question that, I mean, I know I have to like increase cash flow, whatever, but how do you actually value a business? I've heard so many different metrics. I've heard so many different things. I know of course, it's worth what somebody's willing to sell, but there has to be some way you can kind of get your arms around what somebody would be willing. So, for example, one of my other hats. So the business I'm going to sell in 2 years is my co-working space. So I'm going to, open more offices and have, an actual package to give to somebody, to sell to somebody. But I'm also a real estate broker, and I know people sell their brokerages, and like,
Sure.
and really, what you're getting there is a promise of some future business, right? How do you value that? I mean, I know this is a huge question. Like, well, what kind
It
of business
is.
is a crazy person? But, is there a metric? Is there some kind of way that people can get an idea of how much their business might be worth to someone?
No, you hit the nail on the head. It is a big question. And the problem with this question is I think, and it goes right back to the whole maybe why it is that business owners don't prepare. I think we're just busy. We're so freaking busy. It's
Right.
like when you get an answer like the one I'm going to give you right now, which is it depends.
Yeah.
You're like, oh God, here we go. So that helps a whole lot. All right, I'm gonna go back to work now. So, I have actually, right after you and I are done recording here, I'm going to lunch with a client of ours who owns a real estate company who sold it. I'm sorry, who sold it, who just bought another real estate company, and we helped as part of that process on the buy side. So we have a little bit of a glimpse into what specifically the real estate sector looks like.
Mhm.
We've helped IT companies sell. So every sector is a little different. Sometimes they'll say, it's a multiple of gross revenue, so top line. Most times it's a multiple of EBITDA. So and most people don't know even how to calculate EBITDA,
Yeah.
especially businesses say under 10 or even $15 million in revenue. Oftentimes they're dealing with QuickBooks with their CPA. They don't really know how to use QuickBooks, but they know how to move the deductions around from meals entertainment to something else so they get 100% deduction instead of 50%. I mean, we all know how to do that. But we don't know how to use our balance sheet and our cash flow statement, our P&L as a tool to help us with cash flow and help us grow. So we don't understand EBITDA and we don't understand multiples and kind of like I really appreciate, by the way, you being so transparent and willing to say that, hey, I'm selling this in 2 years, because most people don't want to share they're selling it either because they don't want to freak out their staff. They don't want to,
Yeah.
I don't know, front run the whole deal. So I would say it's usually a multiple of EBITDA. Sometimes it can be a multiple of gross, like in the financial advisory industry. In my industry, it's
Yeah.
a multiple of gross
Yeah.
revenue. But then there's all the intangibles. So yes, we want to grow our top line revenue, right? We want to make more money, but profit margins are in there. Risk is in there. You have to think. I'm going to stop so we can pause and kind of reset here. But you have to, when you think about selling your company, probably one of the first things you want to do, along a list of things, by the way, is to think like a buyer. Like if
Yeah.
somebody came in to buy your company, if you can step outside the box for a second and say, if I were buying my company objectively, which is almost impossible to do, what would I be thinking about? What would my not what would I love? What would I love about this company? What are the good things? What are the bad things? What are the things I'd be worried about?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's like you say, it can be hard to do that because my business is beautiful. Or you can even you could see it the other way. All I know is every single thing that's wrong with it, and that's not necessarily going to be what's going to concern somebody, right? I'm going to put they're saying I'm going to put out X amount of money, and am I for sure going to get it back? And what kinds of things could get in my way of recapping or recouping my investment? And yeah, so and is that something that you help people with? Is it to sort of be that person on the outside, the objective
Yeah.
observer?
Yeah, we do help people with that. We have a big process we take people through. I always say that, and this might be a question you have, so I apologize if I'm answering in advance, but we always say that people should plan at least 2 years before they sell. And the reason for that is because if we do a plan, it usually takes a year to build the plan. Now I call it an emergency plan. Like if we're trying to really burn through it, we can burn through the plan if the business owner has the time and will dedicate the time to meet, do the homework, you know what I mean, and stay on pace. We
Yeah.
can do it in 4 to 6 months. But more importantly, once we have the plan built, now we've got to do the work. And I always liken that to like you go online and you hire a fitness coach or dietitian, or you go to the gym and you say, you get on the treadmill, they put that mask on your face and try to suffocate you, and you say, okay, what do I need? What do I need to eat? What do I need to do to get in shape, get healthy, lose weight, whatever,
Yeah.
and they give you this diet and exercise plan. That's what we do. We build, it takes time and
Yeah.
it's a lot of Q&A. It's a whole lot more than getting on a treadmill and suffocating you. But we want to understand your business intimately. We want to, the steps, I can go through the steps if you'd like me to later, but we want to understand your business intimately. And then we want to find out what's that diet and exercise plan that's going to get you where you want to go. And there's going to be 12 things, by the way, but we can't do all 12 of them. So what we want to do is we want to organize those 12 things into the top 4 or 6 that really move the needle. And we can quantify how much it's going to change your absolute value or enterprise value and how much it's going to change the multiple. So we want to focus on the things that are really going to move the needle. And those are the things we're going to focus on for the next year or 2 years. But here's the problem. We just got done talking about how business owners will ask a question like, well, how do you value my company? And then you say, well, it depends. And like, all right, enough of this. I'm going back to work. Well, imagine being given a plan, a diet and exercise plan, and then going and doing it all yourself. Most of us will just go to the gym. We'll try to do it ourselves. We won't do the diet really well. We might go to the gym half as much as we want, and within 3 months, we stop going altogether. So what you need, in my opinion, what most people need is an implementer to come in and help make you do it. And I call that the personal trainer. And it's
Yeah.
usually a fractional CFO that you pay a retainer. They help you implement the plan. They take those 4 to 6 pillars of things we can improve that really move the needle. And over the course of 1 year to 2 years, we make those changes, and now all of a sudden we've not only increased the absolute value of the company, the enterprise value, but we move the multiple, not only relative to your prior years, but also relative to other peers in your sector.
So are there some things that sort of always get on that list? Like drink more water? Like
Yeah,
are there things that
drink more
you
water.
yeah.
That's awesome. Well played, well played. Yeah,
So
no, there are. I would say that a lot, one of the first things that comes up usually is retention, retention bonuses, retention contracts with key employees.
Mhm.
So again, I come into my business and I look at it. One of the first questions I should think of myself as a buyer is what happens if Christine's gone? Does this business run without her?
Right.
Right? If not, well, we got to have somebody in that team that people trust that can kind of run things
Right.
because the buyer doesn't necessarily want to come in and run the business, especially if they own another business and they're already working X hours a week, right? So
Yeah.
usually that's the first thing. It's like, okay, how much is the business owner involved and how much do we need them?
Yeah.
A business that relies on the business owner 100%, and if the business owner were gone, the clients would all leave, is not a sellable business.
Right.
So I think that, but I think there's things you can do though to kind of, and the irony is if you implement strategies to help fix that problem, the irony, and this goes back to it doesn't matter if you're selling in 2 years or 12 years or 3 years and 13 years, is ironically enough, you're going to have more work-life balance now, right? And isn't that what we
Right.
all kind of want? Or at least we say
Right.
we want it, right? But then we just keep working. So that'd be the first thing. Another thing would be customer concentration,
Mhm.
which you wouldn't have to worry too much about in a co-working space or even as a realtor. Um, but there are companies out there that they'll be making say 10 million in revenue, and their top five clients account for 4 million in revenue. That's kind of a problem, you know.
Yeah.
So and and then it goes back to question one: how good are the relationships, or how close are the relationships between the owner and those top five clients? Because that could, all of a sudden the business goes down in value dramatically, and that's not even it's not even a tangible qualifiable metric really. It's an intangible.
Yeah.
Buy-sell agreements, continuity. If something happened to the owner, who would take over? That kind of goes along with the first thing. Retention bonuses, retention contracts with key employees, so they stick around for the next 2 years. Because oftentimes, if you've got a great business owner that everybody loves, and they leave, obviously you're not telling your staff you're selling usually. So
Right.
when it's like, hey, I'm heading out, this person's coming in to take over, this company's taking over. Maybe it's a strategic buy where another company in the industry is buying you. And all of a sudden the employee's like, oh God, I really loved you as an owner. I think I'm going to start looking for a job. It's like, well, nope,
Yeah.
hold on, get those things set in
Right.
advance.
Right. Yeah.
And then maybe they find out things are great when the successor owner comes in. So that will be another one. And then I'll say a third big one is, and this is not so much about on the buy side as it is on the sell side, is there's a survey that goes out every year. And the last one I saw said that 75% of business owners who sell a year later strongly regret that they sold their business.
Really?
And the number one reason by far as to why they regret selling is because they didn't have a plan for what they were going to do when they quit. Because we business owners work 50 hours a week, it's our
Right.
baby.
Right.
And then we think, oh, we're just going to ride off into the sunset. And then we're bored. And we're like,
Right.
God, I have no purpose in life now. So you have to build of the 12-step process we take people through, step 3 and 4 include a personal financial plan for the owner and wife. Oh, sorry, owner and husband, or owner and wife.
Yeah.
Or if it's multiple partners, we literally will do multiple financial plans, retirement plans, and so much of it is intangible. It's not it's not just the numbers. Obviously, the numbers have to be a part of it. Which,
Yeah.
for instance, what's the business have to sell for you to ride off in the sunset? What's that
Right.
number have to be
Yeah.
based on your other assets, your cash flow, expenses? Do you want to stay in your current state? Do you want to snowbird? Things like that.
Yeah.
So that's all important. But more importantly for business owners, I call it life after football because the statistics in football. If you people who quit, what is the average length of an NFL player is like 3.3 years, which means they're like 24, 25 years old, and then that's it. Well, what are you
Yeah.
going to do now, right? You
Wow.
get
Yeah.
depressed, you're on Prozac. So you have to have a plan for what you're going to do and what you're going to keep yourself busy with,
Yeah.
which has nothing to do with money at all, honestly.
Right. Right. No, it has to do with mental health and being challenged and all the things, all the reasons we start a business in the first place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
So is there also sort of a value? Are there some businesses that are just going to be too inexpensive that nobody would really want to buy them? Or is there a sweet spot on that?
No, that's a really good question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that before, but I have three different business brokers or investment bankers that I work with that help facilitate the sell. They're like the sale. They're like the intermediary between buyers and sellers. They help keep things confidential. They help find buyers for the company. And two of these three work with primarily companies that have 10 million or more in gross revenue, and they're not really interested in anything lower than that,
Yeah.
and they don't really want anything higher than like 150 to 200.
Mhm.
But I have one person that most of his deals are companies that sell for less than a million.
Mhm.
So I think
Interesting.
that again, it's all about how the business looks, how it's run. You know, margins are important, right? And then back to that whole how important is the business owner in the equation. So I think you can have a company that you know, earns 2 million in revenue or 1 million in revenue and can sell for more than a million. I think that there's companies out there that make 750 a year, and maybe the multiple is based on EBITDA. It's not based on gross revenue, but maybe they can get like 250 for it, you know, something like that, depending on how well it's run. But then we get back to planning again. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
we can't just say to ourselves as owners, all right, I make 750. I've worked my butt off for 3 decades. This is a great business. It's provided a pretty good lifestyle for me. I think it's great. You know, it's my baby. I've got a friend in the industry, by the way. He wrote a book called Your Baby's Ugly. And that's the whole the whole
Love
premise behind his book is that, you know, we all think our baby is the prettiest thing in the world, but
it.
really in most cases they're not,
Yeah.
objectively anyway. So yeah, I think you just have to kind of make sure you're planning at the end of the day, and it doesn't matter if your company is earning $500,000 a year, 5 million or 50 million. You will two things: you'll make more money, you'll monetize your life's work with a higher sale price if you plan, and you won't, and you'll get less if you don't. Period.
Yeah.
Here's a case study for you. Two IT companies, similar size, similar geographic area, both rural areas, both $4 million in revenue, almost exactly. Both sold within the last 3 years. One of them planned in advance, went through this whole process, built a team out, which, you know, we always kind of play quarterback, but we have, I mentioned business broker, corporate attorney. You need somebody like that. You need an investment banker. Um, you know, so you need this kind of like team of assistant coaches, so to speak, to help you do this so that
Yeah.
you can keep running your company. But anyway, the two companies, $4 million a piece in annual revenue, both rural, both same sector. One planned, did a planning process in advance. The other just said, I'm done, I want to sell. The difference in sale prices were literally 2.1 million versus 4.3.
Wow.
Now
Wow.
that's an extreme example because
Yeah.
company B really planned like crazy, and then the other company did nothing. They had paper, not a lot of things. You would think an IT company would have a lot of you know, everything systematized and electronic, but they still had a lot of paper. That they didn't have the right staff in place. One of the staff wanted to leave. Like we've got one right now that we're working with that the company selling is technically two companies and it should be split into two sales. And then they also own commercial real estate, which that should be a third transaction. So you don't want
Yeah.
to sell them all together. But the CEO wants to leave. And we're like, you have to find another CEO and wait another year to sell. And he doesn't want to
Yeah.
do that. He's like,
Wow.
no, it'll be fine. I'm like, no, it's not going to be fine. You're going to get a lot less money for your company. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting that you brought that up because I also own the space where the business is, and I was wondering about that. Like, is that something that I should consider? Should I sell that to somebody different, right? It does have its own value, or should I plan on selling that along with the business, which would be a little bit messy because it's a 1031 exchange, and then there'll be all kinds of
Mhm.
math
My
with that.
recommendation would be to sell it to whoever wants to buy it, but to make sure it's a separate transaction, completely separate from the business sale.
Yeah.
So it can be sold to the same person who's buying the business, but it needs to be a separate transaction
Yeah.
for the sake of 1031. We can open up a whole new rabbit hole there, by the way, which I'll just tease you with. But you could also the most recent company that sold, they held on to like three commercial properties and thought they were just going to collect rent. And initially it was nice,
Yeah.
but then eventually they just felt like they weren't retired. They were too
Yeah.
busy, so they just sold them. You know, so they've gotten rid of those. So you can keep them and then sell them later. You can sell it at the same time to somebody who's not the business owner, like an investor, or you can sell it to the owner that's buying, as
Yeah.
long as they're separate transactions. The rabbit hole tease that I'll share is that when you sell commercial or residential real estate, most people don't know that aside from owning more active real estate, so like selling your commercial property, you could go buy two or three residential properties and not pay capital gains tax, right? You could avoid the
Right.
cap gains by
Right.
1031.
Yeah.
You could also sell it and you could put it into another commercial property maybe, and you could do a 1031 and avoid cap gains there.
Yeah.
That's all fine, but the problem that remains is the terrible T's, right? Toilets, tenants, trash, we're still working. What you can also do is something called a Delaware statutory trust, where you can 1031 it out of active, you know, physical that you're managing commercial or residential real estate into a passive um, commercial property that you're a joint owner with a bunch of other people. It's private. The 1031 still works, and you're going to get maybe 3.5 to 4% annualized growth or income from it, partially tax qualified. and you don't have to manage it. It can be hospitals, it could be storage units. So that's another option too.
Yeah. Cool. Nice, good things to think about.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about your own business and thinking about, do you have, are you doing all the things that you're teaching other people to do? And
We are, yeah. We have a fractional CFO on that helps us. We practice what we preach here. So, we're bonus plans, having those in place, having retention in place. In our industry, it gets really hairy with non-competes and non-solicits. So, one of the things that we learned over the years was instead of just doing non-competes and non-solicits, if you own a business where you have people who are either, in our case, financial advisors that are in charge of relationships, and the
yeah,
relationships kind of get deeper and deeper with that advisor or those advisors, or maybe it's I don't know, maybe it's I'll just throw it out there and say like a manufacturing or plumbing company. They sell plumbing supplies,
mhm,
and there's salespeople that are selling these things, a sales team, and you're worried about losing those people and losing the relationships. Instead of just having a non-compete and non-solicit, which we do, you can have what's called a buy-sell agreement set up, and it gets revised every 2 years, where not only they can, non-competes and non-solicits are very easy to uphold, in court. Usually the business owner loses at the end of the day. But if you have a buy sell setup and you say every 2 years we're going to revalue your relationships and the people you're working with, and if you want to leave and you want to take those relationships with you, that's fine. Here's what it's going to cost you. And that holds up in court.
yeah. Okay, interesting. Oh, yeah, because that's it, right? People, it's not even in real estate. I could work for, like I used to work for Remax, but people aren't
Mhm.
working with me because I work for Remax. They're working with me
No.
because they trust me. So
Right.
if you walk away, it's not like, oh, well, I don't care because I just want to buy my food at Whole Foods. You know what I mean? It's not the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's an interesting way of dealing with that problem in that situation. What do you think is, well, I know you see a lot of mistakes that people make. I know you see a lot of
Oh
worst
yeah.
case scenarios and things like that, but is there anything that you would say is an easily avoidable um, in any kind, and this doesn't have to be with regards to business and selling your business and stuff, but are there things that you just cringe every time you've come across another client who does this thing or these couple things that it's so easily avoidable? Like you were saying, 52% of people don't have a will. I mean, that just seems like such an easy thing to
Yeah.
fix. So are there things like that that you would encourage people to do, like before the end of the week, that they would really change their whole financial, potential or possibility or whatever?
There are so many, Christine. That's why I'm shaking my head. I hate to say there's so many things here's the thing. We business owners are a unique breed of people. We've seen the statistics. 90% of businesses fail in the first year, 70% or something like that fail in the second year. Like people just they're not the businesses that succeed, they're good at doing what they do. It's like the E-Myth Revisited, the E-Myth book.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
like most people, you can either be an entrepreneur, a technical worker, or a manager. And sometimes you can be two, but you can't be three.
Right.
So, but most people are usually really good at the technical work, like whatever you're selling, the widget, the service, or whatever.
Yep. Yep.
And then maybe they might be good at managing people, or they might be really good at the ideas, like big picture.
Yep.
But they're so busy that it's not even their fault. They just don't have time to think about this stuff, let alone have somebody evaluate their business from the inside out and go, your baby's this ugly,
Ugly.
right? Here's the things we need to do. So we see a lot of bad things, unfortunately, but I don't want to make it super negative here. The first is you mentioned wills. You're accurate. So 52% of people don't have an estate plan, which means that if they die intestate, which means the courts decide where their money goes. Now, naturally, if you're married or if you have a partner, that's typically going to be, you know, it's going to transfer to your partner directly. But kids, second marriages, things like that, it gets hairy. It gets really, really, it can get nasty. Actually,
Yeah.
we're dealing with a situation right now that's really actually the worst, most ugly situation we've never been a part of in 23 years, and it's not fun at all. There's liability for us. It's messy. So I'd say having an estate plan personally is huge. The business estate plan is a buy sell agreement. Having continuity in place, a continuity plan in place, so that if something, heaven forbid, happened, you get T-boned by a semi on the way home from work, somebody's going to be there to continue running the company,
Yeah.
or people. It could be if anybody's ever heard of an ESOP, an employee stock option plan. I mean, you can sell your company to the whole company if you've got
Yeah.
the right people in place There's huge tax advantages to doing that, by the way. But anyway, I digress. So I'd say that'd be one. Another one would be, I know we've already touched on this, but waiting too long to plan. There's not a whole lot anybody like me can do to help you, or a business broker for that matter. If you're like, I want to sell in a year. I mean, just I want to sell in 6 months. I'm just done. I'm checked out, and things are just revenue's declining because it's obvious you're done, right?
Right. Right.
We see all the time people overestimating the value of their business. That's typical, so that's you probably aren't surprised to hear that. Um, you know, things like we mentioned customer concentration. That's not as big of a problem unless, like in manufacturing, that can be a big problem. Um, but tax planning, that's another big one. If you don't do any planning, you're probably going to pay the IRS a whole lot more than you realize. And not just when I say that, most business owners think, oh, you mean like paying income versus cap gains. It's like, no, I mean, that's part of it. But the bigger part of it is if you've got 2 or 3 years to plan, and you've got a cash problem, which is a great problem to have, right? Like you're doing well.
Yeah.
We can set up, not only can you max out your 401k and then match yourself, but you can also do profit sharing and put more money away. And then you can set up something called a cash balance plan, which depending on your age, we've seen people put away 250 to 300,000 per year on a tax deductible basis, which keeps that money in the company out of the hands of the IRS when
Yeah.
eventually you part ways. Now there's a limit. You can only put away just over $3 million into one of these, so that's the limit, and it has to be conservatively invested until you're done working. Then it can be rolled, and you can do whatever you want with it. But
Yeah.
you could save yourself up to $3 million in tax dollars if you plan in advance. And the people that don't do that planning, you know, do the
They
math,
didn't
right?
say $3
40%,
million.
40, yeah, right, exactly, yeah. So that's a lot of money that it's either your pocket or it's going to go into their pocket. Totally up to you.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
Trying to think of what else here. I guess those would probably be the biggest things.
Yeah. And those are great. They're great tips and things that are actionable right away, right?
Yeah.
So Adam, how do people how do people find you a lot of times? Like is there sort of a way that people are like, "Oh my gosh, I really need I realize that I need this particular sort of expertise," because it is somewhat of a niche that you've created, right?
Super small, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's another reason why we didn't start doing it because there's nobody doing it. When I say nobody, obviously there's somebody doing it, but it wasn't like a marketing play. It was like, oh my God, nobody's doing this,
Yeah.
which means I mean, 80% of businesses don't sell. That's all I have to say, right? That we need to fix that. Then
Right.
that's kind of my mission for the second half of my career, is to change that number as much as I possibly can. But I think that most people find us when I think about, people hire us. A lot of time it's Google. Honestly, they'll be Googling, how to sell my company, or a keyword in Google research is exit planning. So they'll just type in exit planning, and they'll find us that way. But we have a podcast called Elevate Your Business that we do every other week, where we're talking about stuff like this, but other things too. Interviews with people who we've interviewed recruiters on getting top-notch talent. We've interviewed digital marketing companies about how to grow your company and use digital marketing to your advantage. So it's not just exit planning. We're trying to help people grow too.
Yeah.
But so that would be, I'd say the podcast is one way. We read articles, social media, so we're on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, all that stuff. So people find us that way. So, but if I built a pie chart, I would have to say most people find us on the web. Second most is probably just, social media, stuff like that. And third most is probably just a friend tells them about us, or maybe one of the business brokers or attorneys might say, hey, you need to talk to these people about getting a plan together. And of course, all those teammates or assistant coaches are
Yeah.
part of the game plan. I will share one more thing, kind of a pet peeve. I think a barrier to entry is business owners worry it's going to cost too much. They think, well, hold on, you want me to hire you, spend all this time I don't have, spend some money on it. If in the end the plan looks great, but I don't have time to implement it, now I got to hire somebody to implement it. Then I got to pay an attorney to help me with the documents. I got to pay a business broker to help me sell it. Like, am I going to be left with any money at the end of the day?
Right. I
And
know it does
the
sound a
answer to
little
that,
overwhelming.
it takes trust. Honestly, it takes trusting me when I say this. If you don't do that planning and hire all those people, you will get less. net after cost.
Yeah.
I guarantee you will probably get less.
Yeah.
So that's a kind of a pet peeve. I guess maybe that's another thing that, when you said what things do you see that kind of just make you cringe, it's people who don't want to invest in their business to make it worth more.
Yeah. Yeah. You reminded me of like people who don't want to pay a good CPA. It's
Oh,
like if they're not saving you enough money you know what I mean? The first time my CPA is retired now, my favorite one. He was so fantastic. But the first time I sat
hmm,
down with him, he looked at my prior year taxes and he said, "Oh, you know what? Just do XYZ." And he ended up saving me like the first year and a half that I worked with him
right.
just by looking at that one little change. And I don't know how much he saved me after that, but I'm sure it was significant, you know?
And that's another thing we see. I know it's not really an exit planning or business transition planning topic, but we see that with most business owners that are, doesn't matter where they are in their life cycle. The problem is CPAs don't hang a shingle on their door that says, I'm a tax planner
Right,
or I'm a tax preparer.
right.
But there is a difference between a planner and a preparer. My CPA charges me a retainer. I pay him monthly. And that is an incentive for him to talk to me, meet with me proactively, look at my books, make sure there's not any tax surprises at the end of the year. And so, I'm meeting with him 3 times a year to say, all right, here's where we are. Here's how things have grown. What do I need to change my withholdings to? And just like you, when I'd had 5 CPAs in my career, and I thought I had a great CPA like that, the last one before this guy. And when I sat down with him, I had the exact same experience you just shared, which is, he's like, hold on, why aren't you doing this? Why don't you have a car in your business? I'm like, well, I was told because I'm a financial advisor. That's kind of, sketchy, to put a car in your business as a financial advisor. He's like, there's no business owner I know that doesn't have a car in their business. He's like, now don't go putting something stupid in the company, but a car, right?
Yeah.
So, things like that. He's like, do you watch financial shows on Netflix? Yes. Okay. Well, Netflix is the business expense. So it's like running through this list of things, things at home. You do home improvements. You replaced French doors in the basement and your home office is in the basement. Well, we're not going to do a home office deduction because that can be a red flag and that gets a little bit too much in his opinion. But let's write off a portion of the door upstairs, the front door and the downstairs door. Not all of them. Let's just write off the downstairs door because, that seems legitimate. But anyway, there's lots of
Yeah.
things you can do to save that tax bill for sure. But work with a tax
Absolutely.
planner. Don't just like your CPA because he or she is a great person and they're
Right.
fun to hang out with. Sometimes you got to have those tough conversations. I don't
Yeah.
think unlike having a family member you're working with where you got to fire the family member, unfortunately. But it depends on how much you want to grow and how important it is to be efficient and run a sound business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this has been so fun, Adam. I mean, like I
Um,
said, I was going to selfishly hijack all our time together with my own questions. And I appreciate you humoring me there. And I know other people also benefited from it because it's just the kind of things that, like you say, we're so busy working in our business and on our business that you don't necessarily raise your head up to say what's going to happen to me a couple of years down the road, even if it's 20 years down the road. How should I be preparing myself for that today so that I
yeah.
really, I'm not shortchanging myself that the business is going to get what it's really worth. But now our time is like deteriorating. It's slipping away. It's flitting away. So, is there one last thing that you want to leave people with? Something that you want to make sure that people take away, or reiterate, or anything else that you want to just close with?
I don't want to be cliche and just say plan, you know what I mean? But I do. I'll go a little deeper and I'll just say to people who are worried about cost, who are people who are worried about the time it takes to do this planning. Again, it doesn't matter if you're 3 years from selling or if you're 13 years from selling. Business transition planning. I'm actually trying to get the phrase exit planning out of people's vocabulary because it's more than that, right? If you are, a younger business and you go through and you've wondered why it is you can't break above a certain ceiling, if you wonder why you're stuck at a certain revenue, it's probably because there's planning things that it's that whole adage that I don't know what I don't know. Like
Yeah.
there's things you just don't know because there's experts out there that know these things, they've been through it. And frankly, I didn't know any of these things. I had to go through some of them myself with clients. I had to meet other professionals who had their experience, and I learned their case studies. And then you just learn and you learn and you're learning. And this is what we do all day. It's like it's funny. I always talk about hiring, staying in my own lane. We don't do taxes. we refer that business to a tax professional. We don't write wills, trusts, powers of attorney. We send those to an attorney. Do we advise on those things? Yes. Do we have advice for people selling a house or buying a house? Yeah, we do. But do we sell their house? No. I hire a realtor. I think that you need to treat your home life, your business life, the same, and that is treat it like a business and have a personal CFO, whether that's someone like me or somebody else, and have these assistant coaches there to help you plan whether you're selling 3 years from now or selling in 13 years. Because if you're selling 13 years from now and you go through the steps, call it a 12-month process, you do the homework, you put all these different things in place, two things are going to happen. Three things. One, you're going to de-risk the company. It's going to have lower risk. It's going to be more attractive to a buyer. And number two, you're going to make more money and you're going to make it faster. And because of the compounding value of time, it's going to exponentially affect the end value of your business down the road because you planned so early. And then third of all, if a business owner, a competitive buyer comes up one day and just completely unannounced and gives you an offer you can't refuse, first of all, you deserve it because you did the planning. That's why you're getting the offer.
Right.
And second, if you didn't do that planning, you might not have gotten the offer to begin with, or if you get the offer, they're going to look at the books, they're going to look at your business, they're going to look at your risks, and they're going to say, how about this much? And you're going to say, no, thanks. But it could have been an opportunity for you to exit that business and start another one. And if you're wondering how people are doing that, that's how they're doing it. And then it goes without saying that people who are within 2 to 3 years of selling, those people can really move the needle. That's where it gets I shouldn't say that's where it gets super exciting, but frankly, if I'm being selfish, it's like I'm a pretty impatient person and I like seeing that needle move fast. And while the needle does move fast for the company who's 13 years away from selling, it's not as much fun when you don't get to see the the end result.
Yeah,
The end
exactly.
result takes a while. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually you just reminded me of another question. Is there an age that a company has to be in order for people to consider it? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I just started this business last year, but it's so profitable and now I want to sell it. Like, is that I mean, in your timeline, you have to be at least 2 years away from the start of the business, but
hmm
i- is there such a thing as a company that's too young?
I think, yes, I think so. I think that I'm just trying to think of some like rules of thumb because I hate rules of thumb. So I think that regardless of age of company, because there's companies out there that 2 years in, they're kicking butt and taking names and earning 2 3 million a year, right, out of
Yeah.
the gate.
Yeah.
So I think that it's more tied to revenue. If you feel like you've got a few employees, a couple employees, and you've got revenue that feels really good, and you feel like you're getting stuck, that's going to be, I think, the time to start talking to someone like me, and that we might not even recommend like a full-blown business transition plan. Like you might not be ready for that.
Yeah.
You might be at a point where you've grown so fast out of the gate, but you're kind of losing control. It's gotten bigger than you and you don't really know what am I doing? You're trying to read books and you're like, how are these people doing it? And
Mhm.
there's no book or I'm actually trying to do in our podcast, I call it How I Built It episodes where we interview owners and how they did it. In fact, I'd love to have you on if you don't
Oh,
mind, but
thanks. Yeah, I'd love
hear
to.
your story. But yeah, I think that there's nothing out there. There's no like Napster of business owner stories so you can learn from other people, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I think that once you hit about 1 million or more in revenue, I think the first thing I would probably recommend is talking to a fractional CFO. It doesn't really make sense to hire a CFO on staff until you're probably 10 to 15 million in revenue, million at minimum. It just doesn't make sense. There's not enough work, to
Yeah.
do. But if you
Right.
hire a fractional CFO, they can kind of come in and start treating your business like a big boy business. If anybody's read the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, it's that whole concept of what got you to where you are isn't going to get you to where you want to go next. You've got to do something different. You probably need new vendors. You probably need new CPA. You probably need teammates to come in here because there's just things we don't know. We're good at selling homes. We're good at building a co-working space.
Right.
We're really good at retirement planning and investment management and helping businesses sell, but we're not, well, in our case, we do this, but most businesses are going to look at this and go, well, how do I know who I should hire? How do I know if I can afford them? Like,
Right.
how do I know if it's the right hire? Like, how do I know? How do I grow? How do I end up not in a place where a year from now things have gone so well, but now I have this problem where I have too much money and too much work and not enough capacity. Like, we
Yeah.
literally have to churn people away. That's the worst thing in the world. And then somebody from the outside will go, it sounds good to me. It's like, well, yeah, it sounds good because you're doing well, but it's a problem. So
Yeah.
I guess that would be the last thing I'd say.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much, Adam. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And
No, thank you.
All of Adam's different links that he talked about are going to be in the show notes. So check them out. Check Adam out. Give him a call because it's never too early to plan for your ultimate success, right?
That's right.
Awesome. And thanks for joining us. And I hope we'll see you again next week when we'll have some other cool thing and cool person on to talk about.
Thanks so much, Christine.
Thank you.